Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, what you been up to?
Not much, to be honest, this week. I've not
that's boring.
Seen or done anything. But my brother did see a tawny owl.
Nice.
Quite interesting hearing someone that, I mean, tawny owls are very excited, but it sounded like he almost dropped his chocolate bar in this video, which is quite cute and quite funny.
This is just sort of staring out the window whilst eating chocolate.
I like the way that the camera kind of pans over the top of this wall, like he's hiding behind a wall to watch this owl. Which, fair enough. I mean, owls, they don't always stay still for you to view them at the distance that he is. And then a friend of his has also got a really lovely video of an otter playing in the River Tor.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's by the museum in Barnstable. I'm pretty sure it's the one in the River Tor. It's a bit hard to tell because the only
I think
thing
from
I've
the
got
reflection.
to go off. Yeah, it's the reflection.
Yeah,
it looks like it's the museum.
But that's really cool.
Yeah, some nice footage. But for me personally, nothing. No. Although I've heard the red deer are rutting. I think I've already mentioned that.
Yeah, you said that last week.
Really, really cool to hear it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I've not done a giant amount either. It's been a very plant-heavy week, actually, for me. I've been cutting back indoor and outdoor plants. So I've been cutting indoor plants and then potting them into new pots and everything, and getting them ready to either go off to different places. I tried selling some. Haven't really gone anywhere, but oh well. I've taken some into work and planted them into enclosures and into fish tanks, which that Tetra tank is now as planted out as it could possibly be at work. So you'd be pleased with that.
Very good.
Apart from that, I then thought I would decimate the hedges out the front of my garden because I didn't like them.
Yeah,
I've had this thing about them since we moved in, and I've said to myself year on year, well, I'll cut them back this year. And then I just went out there the other day and went, right, I do need to trim them back. And I started trimming. And it's a very dangerous combination when you're listening with headphones to heavy metal and you've got a pair of trimmers in your hand. And you realize when you stand back a couple of minutes later, you've gone from having hedges that were close to about 6 foot down to about 30 centimeters. So I decimated.
What plant is it?
Dogwood.
Dogwood, right?
Now, I don't mind dogwood in the wild and everything. I quite like it. The reason I disliked having it where it is this time of the year it drops all its leaves. So I want a hedge out the front of my garden that's an actual hedge for a good chunk of the year, not a bunch of sticks. But for the moment, it looks like I just took a hand grenade and lobbed it into the front garden. So, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting look.
Yeah.
Like I say, plant heavy. And then so many trips to the dump with a car
I bet.
full of branches and bushes and bits and pieces of plant that I think I ended up doing about 5 trips in total.
Wow, okay.
To basically get rid of all of that. So it was worth it, and I felt good at the end of it. So good workout.
I really can't think of anything I've done, plant or animal wise, apart from obviously the pets that we have.
True. Yeah.
Other than that, nothing.
That's not always necessary.
No.
Like I say, number 1 tip for this week: don't garden whilst listening to heavy metal music. You will take out more than you think. Should we move into the news?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into the news for this week. Aaron, I believe you are taking us out. What are we looking at?
My first actual article, it comes to us from IFL Science, and the headline reads, at 3,000 meters, the world's highest known case of bird predation has been recorded.
At 3,000 meters up?
Yes. So this is the news that basically there's been a death at 3,000 meters above sea level.
Right.
And it happened to an Arctic breeding grey plover. Plover, yes, plover. Sorry, I would always say plover instead of plover.
Say plover
because of clover. Because the English language is rubbish.
Garbage.
Yeah. But basically they know about it because it was one of those ones I think we reported on this group, this species a little while ago. That I think it was that they'd had to make massive diversions in their migration.
Eagles.
Was it the eagles?
Yeah, that was around the Ukraine war.
Yes. Well, these guys they have to do similar. And so they've been GPS tagged in order to follow their migration patterns.
That was going to probably follow up my next question of how do they know that it died at that altitude?
Yeah,
but
well,
I'm guessing the GPS tells you that.
Yeah, and they don't know for sure, but they think the culprit is peregrine falcon.
Yep. I mean, yeah, there's not much else going to be doing it.
No. No.
Right. Well, my first article is kind of good news in that it's no news to an extent. It is from the Marine Conservation Society, and it's then basically backing up the fact that the government has confirmed that they will stick to the previous government's pledge to ban disposable vapes in England and Wales, due to come into effect on the 1st of June 2025. Now, personally, they could have probably sped this up a bit, but they are basically working to phase out disposable vapes.
Good.
I mean, the fact that they came in as a really good sort of alternative to people being able to quit smoking,
yes,
and things like that, brilliant. The fact that then they went on to being things like cherry bubble gum and turnip and lamb salad or something.
They tried to make it it was a really weird thing where it was a stepping stone to making it like helping you quit, and then some people decide, hey, we can actually make money off this by making it attractive, and all of a sudden you've got the very same propaganda like adverts on the side of buses and stuff that smoking would have had once.
Yeah. But I mean, I've got no problem with people doing that. What I do have a problem with is the same reason why I despise smoking. You want to go and put whatever you want into your own body, that's on you. But it's the amount of litter that comes with cigarettes, and people just throwing fag butts into the sea or into to drains and that, and just littering. It's the same with the disposable vapes. I mean, they're just as bad. Working in a college, and this shouldn't be something that turns up in a college, the amount of them that you find lying around the place is unbelievable.
The next article is from Raptor Persecution UK, and they're
probably not good news, I'm guessing.
No, it is good news, this one. Yeah, so this one, the headline is Wildlife Trusts buy part of Rovbury Estate in Northumberland, ending grouse and pheasant shooting. So yeah,
perfect.
Really good, because sometimes when the Wildlife Trust and other similar organizations, when they buy land, there's these existing kind of licenses and rights, contracts that they cannot get rid of, unfortunately, for at least for a little while. But in this case, the Wildlife Trust, in partnership with Northumberland Wildlife Trust, have bought part of this estate and are bidding to buy the remainder of the estate within the next 2 years. And in doing so, they've been able to completely stop the grouse and pheasant shoot, which is great news, because it's not just the weird notion of getting your jollies by killing something. It's also the environmental impact of raising invasive bird species.
To let loose on mass.
And they say that, oh no, they all die over the winter. No, they don't die over the winter. There's one that lives in the street, just on the other side of the road in the bushes there.
And which is impressive, because there's so many cats in your road.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem too bothered. But he will, in the spring, when it warms up, all those little adderlings that have just been born, go
and hoover them up.
They go eat all of our adders, and then that's why our adders are disappearing.
Yeah.
And that's not the only impact they have on the environment, but it's certainly the one that springs to my mind most as I sit here with a snake tank in front of me.
So my next one comes to us from Sky News, and this is, when I when I had this bit brought up on mine, it was actually the first day of this happening. A raccoon who has escaped from a zoo compound found no worse for wear, but 3 others remain at large. Well, just the day after that, which is today, the second one was found.
Right.
They've basically escaped from Amazon World Zoo on the Isle of Wight, and I mean that's good in itself in that they're not going to be able to go any further. Also, kind of sad in that raccoons are one of these groups of animals that are going to disappear from UK zoos within the next 10, 15 years because they are on that invasive species list. So they can't be bred anymore. So they will slowly peter out. So if you're in the UK and you want to go and see a raccoon, there are only a few collections that really have them nowadays because they weren't exactly a common animal. But they are an absolutely fantastic animal. Both of us have worked with raccoons in the past.
Yeah.
And the opportunity for enrichment, the opportunity for interaction, and just to grab the public attention-wise, absolutely amazing animals.
Yeah, so long as you have like viewing windows in the enclosure and it's not just a wall.
Well, yeah. Less said about that, the better. But sadly, yeah, there's 2 of these guys out and about. Thankfully, one of them was found in the zoo and just sort of wandering around. So there's probably a good chance, I'd say, that the other 2 are probably not too far behind. They're probably somewhere.
They'll be somewhere nearby.
Yeah.
But the thing is, considering like how much a raccoon actually stands out and how they're actually surprisingly big, mostly because in captivity they're
quite fat,
just so far overfed.
Yeah.
They do hide very well when they want to.
Very good at it. Yeah,
and they're very clever.
Speaking of fat animals.
Yeah, speaking of fat animals, we're going to end my part in this newsreel anyway on a really good high note, a fun one. And that is, of course, Biaza's Fat Bear Week kind of competition has come to a close. And the winner, the champion of fat bears, is Diego from Jimmy's Farm. Now Jimmy's Farm is also in the news at the moment because they've just rehomed. I think it's Brunhilde, who is a bear from a bear who was rescued. She's an orphan bear who was rescued in Romania, I think.
Okay.
And for various reasons, including the war in Ukraine, they've not been able to put her back to the wild. And finding her a place has been very difficult for this sanctuary. And luckily, Jimmy's Farm have stepped in and welcomed her in. But yes, congratulations, Diego, for winning Fat Bear Week. And if you'd like more information,
what did he win? Did he give him like a cake
I hope he got something. It doesn't say what he got, but I will say that he got 960 votes. Wow. So I've actually just read this bit. He got 960 votes. Guess how many votes the bear in second place got?
959?
6.
Oh,
966. So he won
by a
landslide.
By a bear slide.
He won by a bear-sized asteroid. So yeah, well done, Diego, and I hope this brings him happiness as he prepares for hibernation, because that's what Fat Bear Week is all about. It's about who's the fattest bear as they go into hibernation, because the fatter the bear as it prepares for hibernation, the better condition he'll come out of hibernation in. Yeah. Well, and well done to the team at Jimmy's Farm.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I congratulate him and not them.
So to finish off my articles, from Marineland Melanesia Crocodile Habitat and Gift Shop, which is it's basically a crocodile rescue center as well as coral breeding center in Queensland, in Australia. They've got the very sad news that the largest and oldest crocodile in captivity, Cassius, has unfortunately died at the ripe old age of approximately 110. Some people are saying 110, some people are saying 120, but he was a wild caught crocodile, so no one knows.
He's the one we spoke about a little while ago.
Possibly, I think so, yeah. So on their Facebook page, it says, "We share with deep sadness the passing of our beloved mate Cassius. He was more than just a crocodile. He was a cherished member of our family and brought joy and compassion to his best mate George for some 37 years. George had only recently been relocated into Cairns from Marineland after 52 years living on the Green Island, which is where the centre is, to an assisted care residence on the 5th of October. Cassius's condition declined since the 15th of October. He was very old and believed to be living well beyond the years of a wild crocodile. No one actually knows the exact age that crocodiles live to, and they are one of those animals that can live easily into their hundreds.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he had done.
He'd been found like over 100 years ago.
So yeah, he was originally caught in the 80s because he was worrying boats and attacking cattle and things like that. So in Australia, a lot of care is taken to make sure that they're not shot, but they are taken into captivity to basically make sure that they're removed as a problem animal, really. And yeah, he lived out the rest of his days there and will be sadly missed. So
yeah,
he was a huge looking crocodile by the size.
He was a mean looking machine. That one.
He's got quite a, I'd say, bruised up snout, I suppose, in the way that he looks. But yeah, I mean, crocodiles, they don't care about looking perfect. They are so perfect themselves anyway. They don't need to win no beauty competitions.
No,
they're amazing anyway. So yeah, that's all of my articles this week. So
Cassius, hope Cassius gets the rest he deserves then. Yeah. So that will just about do it for our newsreel. We'll move on into the main topic discussion, which is with me this week, and it comes to us from a news source that I've not used or even heard of before, and that's Pocket Online. And the headline is, "What human and octopus brains have in common?"
Is it that we both like punching fish? I mean, I don't like punching fish, but I'm sure there are some people out there.
I've never
like
punched a fish, but never punched one, so I can't comment. But yeah, so Gareth, how far back do you think we have to go in years to find the common ancestor that humans and octopus share?
Oh God. Probably 400-500 million years.
Do you know what? In the grand scope of deep time, I feel like it would be unfair not to give you that. It's actually 600 million years.
That's still quite a long way. I'm 200 million years out at the highest.
But in the grand scope of 4 billion years, yeah, I don't think that's bad.
I'll take the loss on it, but it's appreciated.
Yeah, well, this common ancestor, it was basically a primitive worm-like creature and was quite different to both us and octopus, obviously.
Yeah.
For example, it had eye spots in place of the realize that both species enjoy, and it wasn't particularly intelligent, which is something
shocking
that we both enjoy. It was, of course, at this time that our ancestors split. Evolution took two separate paths, one of the simple-minded invertebrate and the other of the complex-brained vertebrates. The exception, of course, being that cephalopods, like our 8-tentacled friends, are not quite so simple-minded. An international research team may have now cracked the question of why cephalopods share this brain complexity with us mammals. And the answer seems to be the incredibly vast repertoire of microribonucleic acids, so in our DNA, parts of the genetic code that bind messenger RNA, so that I don't have to say that word again, which instructs, maybe an octopus could say it better actually, and that it instructs cellular protein production. This has been preserved across million years of evolution.
I wondered why you'd written it like that.
to survive and basically be observable in cephalopods. But vertebrates have this too, suggesting that microRNAs are pivotal in the production of complex brain systems in organisms. The huge expansion in ribonucleic acid and microribonucleic acid is the third largest such expansion in the animal world, the largest if we ignore the vertebrates. and to survive so long indicates that the genes were crucial to their survival.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty good. Obviously, it's a lot more in depth than that, but for the scope of like discussing it kind of short form for the news. But yeah, definitely check out Pocket online for that one, and it'll have links to the papers and stuff. But yeah, really cool to think that we both split from each other 600 million years ago, and for whatever reason our group found that that complexity helped us survive, and it's just
it's convergent evolution, really, isn't it?
Yeah
At just different points in different groups doing the same thing, using brains to be better.
And if you'd rather not look at the research paper for this, I encourage you to go look at the research paper. But if you don't want to do too much reading, check out some videos on YouTube of octopus getting out of all manner of mazes and puzzles, and out like using jars or coconuts, or just punching fish.
Yeah, well, like I say, I still hold that with intelligence comes a certain level of just being a bit of an arse.
Yeah,
and and you see it in things like chimps. They can be horrible.
Yes.
You see it in humans. We can be very horrible. You see it in parrots. They can be spiteful and horrible as well if they want to be. And you see it in octopuses as well. You get to a certain level and you just start going, it's take that, you random fish.
It's also that there's a technique behind it. Have you noticed that when they punch fish, they how you ball your fist, you curl your knuckles up, your fingers up, and then your thumb is safely protected like that, right? The octopus does the same thing. You have to imagine I don't have fingers and that this is a tentacle.
It can curls
it up, and then
exactly.
It's so cool.
That's why I like them. I think they're cool.
Go watch a video of an octopus punching a fish.
Yeah. Right, should we head into our creature feature?
Let's do it.
It's the creature feature.
We're going to start this week's creature feature off by looking at a creature that was found in a rather odd southern land full of strange creatures, where you might have seen giant snakes, land crocodiles that would be chasing after armadillos that were the size of small cars, and other giant killer birds stalking the plains for any misfortunate creature to cross their path, that they would swiftly turn into food. Sloths that were so big that they could peek into your bedroom window, browsing on trees. And this is basically a place full of real oddities. It's a place that sadly disappeared in so many ways as the continent shifted. Now, you might think we're talking about prehistoric Australia because, well, let's face it, I do talk about Australia more often and New Zealand than probably any other area of the world.
You do cover that area quite well.
But believe it or not, this is not that. It's another strange southern land that spawned many of the creatures that we have talked about in the past, actually. It is South America, which I feel that we have covered a few bits, but there is an untapped goldmine of odd creatures that
we haven't
found
done
there.
a lot over there, have we?
No. And talking of untapped gold mines of strange, odd creatures that sort of get compared to other creatures because we don't have any other analogues for them. This week we are looking at Thylacosmilus, otherwise named or often dubbed the marsupial sabre-tooth, a really fascinating creature. The name Thylacosmilus, and its full scientific name is Thylacosmilus atrox, is Greek for the cruel sheathed knife, which I think is actually a really cool name.
Yeah.
We have so many names that we talk about that are just a bit This is the cruel sheathed knife. This is
a badass name.
Yeah, basically this is a creature that's odd but also has a really funky name. There is surprisingly little information about this animal in a lot of ways, and it's because there are surprisingly few fossils of this animal. A full, complete skeleton has yet to be discovered, but of the sparse remains that have been discovered, They come from the Itazaingo formation of Corral Comado in Catamarca province, northern Argentina. And I apologize to every Spanish speaker that I've just insulted by just butchering that. In northern Argentina in 1926. And it was described quite a few years later in 1933 by an American paleontologist who we have talked about before in the podcast, Elmer S. Riggs, who is one of those sort of, I'd say, lesser known paleontologists, but has done an awful lot of work in a huge variety of fields of different areas of paleontology in the early 20th century. So what on earth does this animal look like? Well, you could probably take a guess from the name that it has big teeth. So at first glance, the main thing you would notice is the teeth, but look closer at the face of this animal and it becomes a bit odder. In fact, the more you look at it, the odder it gets. It's like a bad AI picture of itself. But as we'll see towards the end, there are some really bad AI images of this creature out there, which I found in the course of doing the research for this. First thing you notice, like I say, is the teeth. They are 15 centimeters long, making them comparatively longer than a saber-toothed cat's canines, so Smilodon fatalis. So to give you an idea of tooth size, here is a tooth of a saber-toothed cat. This is of Homoetherium, a species that was found in the UK. This one is, I think we measured it at, 8 centimeters? Something like that.
7 centimeters, I think it was.
Yeah. So it'd be sticking out of the cat's gums like that. And dagger-like teeth for stabbing into their prey. And here's a bigger tooth. This is not off a cat. This is off a T-Rex. But its tooth would stick out that much. And this is about 10 centimeters.
Yeah. So
if we add pretty much the two on top of each other, we would be close to the sort of full length of a Thylacosmilus tooth at about 15 centimeters long. So they are pretty big teeth, and they're relatively odd as well. We'll look at that in a second. Yeah. Now, these teeth themselves are rooted right the way back in the animal's head, making them really deep-rooted. They also continuously grew. So imagine a rabbit that basically has stabbing teeth. I mean, a rabbit does have pretty sharp teeth anyway, and that's what these teeth were like. They had to be sort of worn down on whatever they were eating to an extent, not anywhere close to like a rabbit has to do where it has to chew, but they were continuously growing throughout their lives, and they splayed out towards the sides of the skull as they came out. So a saber-toothed mouth, it's very sort of straight down either side. These actually splayed out a bit as they came down out either side of the animal's mouth. I keep wanting to say cat. It's not a cat. Sticking out of their mouths, where it basically gets its name coming into it. So we've got the cruel knife, but where is the sheath? Well, it's hanging directly below their chin. They have not the floppy flesh hanging down the side of their mouth like a Saint Bernard to hide their teeth. No. They have a chin that would basically put anyone's chin to shame. It hangs down and is essentially the sheath for where these knives would sit when they're not in use. But it's a permanent, solid bone chin. That is a very odd thing to look at. So even odder than this is the eyes. If you were facing this animal and looking at it, it might not be giving you straight on sort of staring into your face look. If you look at any cat or any predator, essentially, even humans, we are stereoscopically able to focus on our prey because our eyes are forward facing. These guys, they were slightly out to the side. So they're slightly boss-eyed, if anything, looking at you. But it is thought that they were still more than capable of using them in a stereoscopic manner. So they're a very odd-looking animal in so many ways. It's like some sort of, like an alien cat. It would be a way of doing it. As for their body size, we don't obviously have a full skeleton of this animal, but we can estimate its weight based on the bits of material that we do have. And as for its sort of weight and build, it's thought that it would be somewhere up to about 100 kilos or possibly even up to 150 kilos in weight, and those are the two extremes of like weight and size limit.
Right.
To give you an idea of what that would look like in terms of, well, the best analogs that we have for an animal like this would be a cat. Lower end, 100 kilos, would be a puma, and the upper end would be something like that of a jag. So think an animal along those sort of size limits. I mean, pumas aren't that far off the size of some jags.
Yeah, well, there's some pumas in some parts of the puma range. They're larger than some of the leopards in parts of their range.
Yeah. So there is the obvious cat comparison, and this happens an awful lot, not just through us doing this to basically be able to get a point across, but this animal is almost certainly referred to as a marsupial saber-toothed cat. And that is a name that is used by, well, myself even, as a sort of shorthand way of describing this animal.
It's a layman's term, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's about as far from the truth as it could actually be.
Yeah.
Because A, it's not a marsupial, and B, well, it's not a saber-toothed cat. First off, it is in a group of animals called the sparassodonts.
Okay.
A group of animals that for a long time, and this could change as well, as with our Dunkleosteus feature, the size and shape of that animal has changed drastically since we did that creature feature. That's the problem with paleontology is, you know, it's not a fixed science. If we knew everything, we wouldn't be studying it, I suppose.
Yeah, that will date this episode quite nicely.
Yeah,
if that does happen.
So it belongs to a group of mammals called the sparassodonts, which is another really cool name. This one has got some of the good names. It means tearing tooth, sparassodont.
That is a cool name. Yeah.
And they are essentially a group of carnivorous mammals that were mostly native to South America. Now, for those of you who are unaware, marsupials actually evolved in South America. The sparassodonts basically sit in the same group of what are called metatherian mammals, which means that it's all the mammals that are more closely related to marsupials than to placental mammals that we are.
Yeah.
So the metatherian mammals is the group where the sparassodonts sit. And for a long while, they were thought to just be marsupials, but they are slightly different, just in some quite minor ways. But essentially, they still have pouches, like a marsupial, and a bit like monotremes as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, you could argue it's a marsupial, but it is very much in its own separate order of mammals. So so we turn now to the next bit, the saber-tooth bit. Now, physical similarities aside, because convergent evolution does a very good job at making things look the same when they're totally and utterly unrelated, is about as far as that goes. This is a case of convergent evolution where the animal has taken on similar ecological roles to saber-toothed cats. But this is where new science, sort of looking at things, has stepped in and actually altered that view as well.
Yeah.
In 2020, research led by the University of Bristol looked at the teeth of this animal and looked at some of the other interesting parts of its skull and came to some different conclusions about its feeding habits and what it could have done and why it may have gone extinct. So the skull of these animals lacks incisors. Now, you might wonder, what on earth, why would it be lacking incisors? But your incisors are your front teeth, and in a cat, they are used to basically nibble bits of flesh off the bone and help them eat. And especially in a saber-toothed cat, where its canines are of no use at being able to do that. Saber-toothed cats like Smilodon or Homotherium would have only been able to use those teeth to basically kill with. They wouldn't have been eating or, breaking food with these teeth.
The saber-toothed cats couldn't grip on. Yeah. Because
they'd shatter the blade, basically.
Yeah, basically the tension on that would break the teeth, yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't actually, or they had very reduced or completely lacked incisors, which is obviously quite a bit of a disadvantage. Its lower jaws were not actually fused together and would be weaker with capturing and holding struggling prey. So the lower jaw. You have a bit here in between your your left and your right hand side of your jaw that is fused together. In primates like us, we obviously have strong jaws for being able to chew and to crush. In something like a big cat, they equally need that as well. But in this animal, it was surprisingly weak. It had a much weaker bite force than cats as well. So another thing that's making you think, okay, is this animal going to be able to actually catch and kill anything, or is it walking around just using its teeth as a hole
makes
punch?
me wonder what those like if those teeth are out to the side and it's got a weak bite, it doesn't.
It's an odd one.
On the surface of the description, it doesn't seem like peak, does it?
No. So another thing it doesn't have is blade-like teeth like this. This is a classic saber-toothed cat tooth. It is thin, it is blade-like, and it is perfect for slicing like a knife. Whereas the T-Rex tooth there is round in cross-section like a banana, and is essentially a hole punch that relies on the fact that a T-Rex has massive jaw muscles behind it that uses that to shatter bone, like a railroad spike going through a bone.
The Rex also had small serrations as well, didn't it?
And so do these ones. I mean, they're replicas, but yeah. Well, it didn't have teeth like that. It had mildly triangular teeth in cross-section.
What, like a shark or
no? No, imagine that tooth, but more splayed out on either side.
So like an equilateral triangle then.
Yeah. So this is a weird animal.
This is getting like, was it trying to get like, was it aerodynamics then?
Not really. South American mammals don't seem to do things by the normal rules of other animals. So the skull and the canines were weaker in a stabbing action as well. It was discovered than those of, say, Smilodon, but stronger in a pullback action. So that ripping action that's used. This suggests that it's not using its canines to kill, but perhaps instead using them to rip open a carcass.
Yes,
using them as
after the
a
fact.
Stab and pull
After
motion.
they've killed, tear into. Oh, hold on. So, right, I
I'm
think
gonna
the penny is dropped.
I'm going to ask you to guess what you think these researchers suggested its diet was in a moment. I'll give you the last few bits of evidence. The other thing is the molars didn't show much wear pattern on them of an animal that would have chewed or crunched on bone. Now, the wear pattern is similar to that of cheetahs and even some captive carnivores like lions, tigers, and cheetahs and things like that. Animals that have had less effort than their wild cousins put into their food.
My penny dropped in the right place, I think.
Okay. So all of this added up. The researchers came to the conclusion that even though it's often seen as a perfect South American marsupial analog for the saber-toothed cat, its feeding strategy is very different, and most likely is not a bone cruncher in any way, shape, or form. But what do you think it was feeding on?
I think it was feeding on scavenged flesh, like the quick and easy bits to get to. It could tear through hide. So you're talking about those large prehistoric mammals that you spoke about dying from whatever, and he comes along,
slices them open.
You can slice them open.
Okay, interesting. Not where they went, although
okay.
So they still suggest it might have been an actual active hunter and not a scavenger.
Okay,
but the suggestion is that it was basically a specialist on internal organs and soft meats. So basically catching, killing it
open to get to the inside.
All the nice soft squiggly bits, the nice, very little hard to work on, but high in nutrients, think livers and all of that. Basically slice them open, eat as much as you can, and then probably be displaced off that kill by something like a forest racid, the giant terror birds, or even a giant land crocodile that were wandering around at the same point.
And
there are a multitude.
The rest, then
probably,
okay.
Or even
it's like
a megatherium.
That's really interesting because that's kind of the reverse of the norm. Like you were saying, that they do things differently in South America. It's really the reverse of the norm because normally a predator would take down the animal, it would have its fill of the flesh, and
Yeah.
something else would be harvesting the inside. I mean, not always, but yeah, something else would be harvesting the insides.
But this is just, well, this is what these researchers have come to the conclusion. But it could obviously change, and it's highly debated. As with everything like this, because there's very little information and there's very little to go on with what these guys were eating. So the diet wise, like I say, there is no shortage of prey to basically be eating at this point. There were lots of, well, not horses or camels or tapirs or any sort of animal that you might, I say camels. There weren't any tapirs or horses or any sort of the mammals that you would associate with South America as large herbivores, because they hadn't got there yet. No capybara, nothing like that. It would have been eating what are called notoungulates, such as toxodon and mixotoxodon, which kind of look like tapirs, kind of look like rhinos. They're another group of strange South American standalone mammals that just basically filled an ecological niche.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Now, parental care as well is something that I sort of fell down the rabbit hole with this, because it's quite cool. Even though it wasn't a true marsupial, like I say, sparassodonts did have pouches, and they would have reared their young in a similar way to modern day marsupials. So think, if you were to sort of come up with an analog in the marsupials that would fit, it would be something like a thylacine, because it's a large carnivorous marsupial. It would have probably had a very similar way of rearing them, and they would have followed along with them as they'd have gone on the hunt. It looks increasingly likely, based on the fact that these teeth were very, very specialized and took quite a while to grow, that their complex feeding strategy, as well, of possibly being a internal organ feeder, that they would have actually had to grow to a certain size before they could have been independent from the parent, which could potentially mean that the young were with the parents for quite a few years before they'd sort of developed those skills, which shows a greater level of parental care than most marsupials are really sort of shown to have. You think of most marsupials these days, they don't tend to hang around with the parents that long after sort of maturing.
Think about wallabies and kangaroos.
They'll be part of the herd essentially, but they're not cared for in a great sense.
Not actively. It's more cared for in the sense of strength in numbers. There's always someone alert, you know.
So it's a very outdated view as well that marsupials are almost like the rubbish parents because they're less evolved than placental mammals. That sort of Victorian view, shall we say, of
Victorians again.
of superiority amongst the placental mammals. So as with all of these creature features, we eventually get to the extinction part. But this is a very, well, roundabout way of getting to the extinction. I did have this on my computer, but it did not send to myself, so I've had to do it on my phone for this last final part. So we get to something called the Great American Biotic Interchange. Have you ever heard of that before?
Yes.
Yeah. It's often abbreviated. I'd never actually heard of this abbreviation until I looked it up, as the Gabby, which sounds like a really rubbish sort of award. You've won a Gabby. It is essentially the point where the Americas joined and the Isthmus of Panama was formed around 2.7 million years ago. Now, what that did is it basically opened the floodgates to a whole bunch of species from the north and a whole bunch of species from the south to basically, in my mind, I envisage just a bunch of animals going north and a bunch of animals going south, meeting in the middle, going, all right, and just sort of,
it's like that scene in Ice Age when they're all migrating, but that one mammoth is going the other way. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So we saw things like giant ground sloths, terror birds, armadillos, marsupials heading north into North America. And we saw things like tapirs, horses, big cats heading down south, dogs as well. All of the animals that we now think of as being quintessentially South American, like maned wolves and jaguars. That was when their distant cousins basically headed south and became South American. So it was a huge period of change when these two land masses joined. And it meant that some species triumphed and some species didn't. The terror birds basically faced extinction because of the big cats. So things like Smilodon and some of the other smaller species of cats as well outcompeted them simply. They basically, the same thing that happens when you have an island species meets another species that can outcompete it. There's not really much that can be done. And we know about the Great American Biotic Interchange, or the GABI, because of some of the sort of first discussion of it around 1876 by the father of biogeography, Russell Alfred Wallace.
Yep.
He basically spent 5 years exploring and collecting specimens in the Amazon basin to back up his findings, of which he then wrote about in 1876. So apart from the whole having the Wallace line named after him, he did a huge amount in South America to basically show how this biotic interchange happened. So yet again, another reason why Russell Alfred Wallace is up there with the greats of biology and zoology. So what does this all mean for our lovely saber-toothed sparassodont? Well, traditionally, it's been put forward for many years that it was outcompeted by the far superior, far larger, and far just better at life Smilodon than itself. And you can't find a documentary or even a bit of like information about this animal saying it faltered at the mere sight of the superior Smilodon, that sort of thing, where it's
Smilodon turned up, and that day they just went, well, that's it.
I'm not worthy, and just fell over dead.
Committed seppuku.
Yeah, exactly. They pulled out their teeth and they just So no, it is very much an old world view that, I mean, there were a lot of animals that did basically go extinct because of competition from others. But this is an animal that probably wasn't, for a couple of reasons. Thylacosmilus roughly went extinct about 3 million years ago, according to new research. And if you remember what I said at the beginning of this bit, the Great Biotic Interchange happened about 2.5 to 2.7 million years ago. So that does make it unlikely that saber-toothed cats were the responsible party for this, mostly because, well, they hadn't made it there for almost 1 million years at this point. So it's they're not guilty, Your Honor, as is probably the best way to put it. But it does seem that Thylacosmilus did suffer the same sort of fate that a lot of animals did at this point, is massive climactic change. Part of the reason why the Isthmus of Panama was happening was volcanic activity around that area, which obviously would have affected climates as well. These animals seem to have been highly specialized, and as we know, with any highly specialized animal, the moment the climate shifts or the moment the habitat changes, even in the slightest, that can be it for a lot of species. So as cool as these animals were, and they are pretty cool, they seem to have just disappeared. Now, like I say, it wasn't most likely the Smilodon that did it, but something basically finished them off at some point. And now, before we finish this one up, I do want to point out that, like I was saying before, there are many bad AI generated images of things out there, and you only have to spend a couple of minutes digging in that cesspit on the internet to find some truly awful attempts at content.
I'm wondering if you're going to say the same thing that I saw.
Okay.
You probably will do, but I'll let you go with it.
So we like to try and be as factual as possible. If we get something wrong, we like to try and correct it. We like to make sure that anything that we put out to you guys, our audience, is as factually accurate as we can make it. And we know that we don't get everything 100% correct. And we don't pretend to be like the be all and end all. We do get things wrong, but there is one thing that we do not do is make stuff up for the sake of it. And the amount of things that I have seen in the course of doing, like, just looking around and having a look at what other people are saying about Thylacosmilus on YouTube and various other places, because I always like to have a bit of a start to any of my research that I'm doing. I like to see what other people have said about it. You know,
Yeah.
it gives you a bit of a flavor as to how people have talked about the animal in the past, especially with something a bit more odd. Unfortunately, you go on YouTube and there are some really good bits about Thylacosmilus on there, but there are so many AI generated shorts and TikTok videos and things like that that are utter garbage. And because people can't seem to be bothered to put their own voice to things, they use AI generated voices, which, in fact, you and I were looking at one of these a while back.
Yeah.
Where instead of calling it Thylacosmilus, it's Thylacosmilus, because it can't pronounce things because of whatever programming it's using.
It was the mannerism with which I mean, it's AI, so pronounced it
Yeah.
as well. Like, it was weird.
What's even worse is because the images have, or because whatever prompt people are putting in and whatever it's gleaming from the internet as to what this animal looks like for these images, it's seeing the bit thylaca in there and it's going, thylacine. Okay, it's basically a thylacine, but with big teeth. So all of these awful AI generated images look like a dog with big teeth that has multiple teeth coming all out of the side of its face in some sort of hellhound-esque looking thing.
There's some pretty grotesque versions of it, yeah.
And it's just, the thing is that annoys me the most about it, and this is me just having a general whinge, is that sort of content gets out there far more than any of the things that we do.
Yeah.
And it annoys me. In fact, if it annoys you that generally good content doesn't get out as much as bad content, please share the heck out of our content so that we can try and push this rubbish where it belongs, in the bin.
I really do hope. I heard someone else saying this on another podcast, but I really do hope that this AI like nonsense it goes the same way as the deep fake stuff. Do you remember?
Yeah,
everyone was deep faking younger versions of actors into roles.
They never did.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
I
it
think
petered out eventually, and I just hope that happens with this, because as you say, like, there's no effort and no care put into it.
Yeah.
But they get like millions of views, and it's such a struggle.
Yeah, it is really irritating, and I hope in the future that sort of thing is just done away with, or at least the level of which things have to be done becomes a bit higher. I don't know.
Or maybe we're just too much like the dinosaurs, and we need to evolve before the AI asteroid takes off.
We'll get the Thylacosmilus video pumped out in the next 10 minutes. I'll get on it. But that's pretty much Thylacosmilus, a really cool South American mammal that I think there are so many untapped South American oddities from prehistory that we could definitely look at, and we will be back to South America, I think.
Yeah, I think so. You didn't actually touch on the AI image that I thought you were going to say.
Okay, go on.
There were two, but the one I thought you were going to say is it's really quite awful. If you haven't seen it, I'll see if I can find it, but it's basically supposedly a baby Thylacosmilus curled up, and it's really weird. It looks like somewhere between a Pokemon and an otter, but not in a cute way.
This is the
like
one that Drew found.
Don't know.
Yeah, I think he found this one as well.
The other one is an adult, I think, Thylacosmilus with 6 legs.
Of course.
There's like a thing out of Avatar where it's like got two sets of shoulder blades and 2 sets of forearms.
I did say it looks like a bit like an alien version of a cat.
So. Yeah. Yeah, there's some weird stuff out there.
Shall we move into our emails before it gets weirder?
Yeah, let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Okay, well, we're into this week's emails. We're going to start things off with last week's question, which was, what is your favorite pterosaur? Aaron, you going to start us off with this one?
So, yeah, the first one comes to us from one of our Patreon members, actually, and that is Jen Babs. And she says, this question has made me realize I know naffle about them. So I'm going to go with the one on Jason and the Argonauts, which, in my mind, being the Greek nerd and the movie nerd, that that run
Instantly.
some alarm bells.
Yep.
She said, it frightened me as a child, and Walking with Dinosaurs supported this. I don't think it did, actually. I promised to read up on them. And so you should after that comment.
Yeah.
Because right before I could comment to say, Jen, they were harpies, which is an ancient Greek
Half
kind
bird,
of
half woman
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it's like a fury almost. She then messaged saying, I've just realized that they were harpies. So yeah, they definitely weren't in Walking with Dinosaurs.
No, I think she may be confusing it with the Ornithochirus that's in that.
Maybe, yeah.
Because that's the only large pterosaur. You see Patinosaurus and Rhamphorhynchus, I
I
think.
think so, yeah.
And that's it.
Dunno,
I
it's
think
been
that's
a
it.
long time since I watched
But I want to go and watch the Jason and the Argonauts.
Such a
Proper
good film.
Ray Harryhausen
Yeah.
at his best. That man was a genius when it came to movie making with stop motion animation.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably wouldn't hold up against a lot of like CGI, but for what it is, so much better. Worlds better.
Also, if it's used right, it's still used today.
Yeah.
To great effect. Even the Jurassic Park 1
Yeah.
had stop motion elements to the Tyrannosaur breakout, as well as CGI and actual puppetry.
True. My other half was booked Quetzalcoatlus, and she explained to me after that point that she just really likes the name more than anything, which is a fun name.
Does she know it's about its the
South
Aztec
American
god?
gods? Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl. Yeah. Louise O'Leary, who is always so awesome at sending in news articles for us to cover. She hasn't named the species. She just
I know
the one in War Games, and I'm not familiar with that.
The one in War Games there's a scene in War Games which is one hell of a film. You ever seen it?
No, I'm not familiar with this at all.
So it's basically it's very 80s in that the technology is so 80s, like in that this kid is playing computer games and has managed to sort of hack, like accidentally hack into like military grade technology, but it's an old Atari basically. Anyway, at one point he's shown flying a remote control pterosaur. It's a pteranodon.
Right.
So
okay.
yeah, it's pteranodon that's in that one. Just a really cool remote control plane that's in the shape of a pteranodon. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, and then to finish that off, we've got Matt Jack Dupe, who's put Ornithochirus because of Walking with Dinosaurs.
Yeah, which brings us
pretty
full
much
circle.
Yeah, which is where I would have started with. Well, I did start with that last week actually, which was Ornithochirus is definitely in there because of Walking with Dinosaurs. Such a cool animal.
We also have a YouTube comment answering this question.
Cool.
And this actually is, again, it's another one of our Patreon supporters. This time, Nick down in Tasmania. And he says it has to be the Quets.
Okay.
I can guess why, just from the fact that he called it a Quet.
Right.
And I would be right, because he then writes, mostly because of some fun memories in Ark. I'm glad someone else had fun memories in Ark, because Gareth and Drew, and someone that you might have seen in our earlier episodes, or heard his voice because it was audio. Only, Shane, they seem to have forgotten that there were once for fun times on Ark.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they were. And that was one of the animals that I did enjoy having, was the Quetzalcoatlus, because it became, it was my kind of flying creature. You could have a pteranodon, which was more like a fighter plane. You could have an Argentavis, which was more sort of like an A-10 Warthog, sort of a combination fighter bomber sort of thing. And then there was the cargo plane. I liked flying the Quetzalcoatlus and being the cargo plane.
Yeah.
That says something about my sort of preferred military I don't want the fighter jet. I want to be in the cargo plane.
Yeah, they were. I tell you what, if Ark 2, if that ever is released, if it's a good game, I might see if Nick's interested in starting a little thing, since you guys don't want to play with me anymore.
Oh.
But he continues, I had a beloved Quetz. By the way, for those who didn't play Ark, Quetzalcoatlus.
Mostly because people can't be bothered to learn the full names of most of the animals.
Triceratops, they're called Trike, and Giganotosaurus,
it's
Giga.
It is very much like, bringing it back to Lost World Jurassic Park from last week, where he's flipping through the
Oh,
the
yeah.
list of
the one with the pompadour.
the pompadour.
Elvis.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
it- What's he saying? The one with the bald spot, Friar Tuck.
Yeah. Basically,
Um,
people can't be bothered to learn the names.
Yeah. So he said, I had a beloved Quetz with a bass on its back named the Love Bus.
Fair enough.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, that was worth being there. So that was last week's question. This week's question, based on our fantastic sabre-toothed sparassodont, we are going to ask, what's your favorite South American mammal and why? Can I take a guess at what I think your favorite South American mammal would be, Aaron?
Yes, you can.
Is it a jaguar?
It is not.
Is it a giant anteater?
It is not.
Is it a sloth?
No.
Oh, then I am out of luck. Go on then.
My favorite South American mammal, and now bear in mind there are two that come very, very
Oh,
close.
it's a bush dog, isn't it? Or Maine
Bush
wolf.
dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bush dog, then probably jaguar, maned wolf, depending on the day that you ask me. But bush dog. I worked with a pair with me and my boss at the time, Andy. We worked and another colleague of mine, Sarah. We worked like very closely together on a male and female that had just arrived at the zoo that we all worked at, and I feel that the chemistry within the human team and the chemistry between us and the dogs was such that we enjoyed a lot of success, to the point that, in my opinion, we should have been given the stud book, really.
Fair enough.
But we were very, very good with those bush dogs. Those bush dogs were awesome. You know what, of all the big cats and all the other like super like charismatic animals that I've worked with, those bush dogs will have given me memories that I will cherish for the rest of my life. They were just so cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when the dogs know you so well, but like, you know, everyone else has got like rigger gloves on and like armored gloves on, and I just walk in there and pick them up. But picking them up for veterinary purposes, they have to have their shots.
Oh,
Not to cuddle them. No, I did cuddle a puppy.
Oh God. Well, I'm gonna go probably quite vanilla mainstream down the middle, but it's giant anteaters for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Drew would say the same.
I mean, they are really cool. And one of the oddest animals that I've ever worked with, I'd say, is giant anteater. Close second to that, I think it's probably going to have to be the yapok,
Okay.
which is a South American species of marsupial, which is known as the fishing opossum.
Okay.
And it has this absolutely weird sort of way of fishing. It hops into the water and it swims around with its hands outstretched like that, basically keeping its head out of water and just sort of feeling around for fish, and then grabbing a hold of them and eating them. I believe as well, I can't be 100% on this. I'll have to fact check myself and then put it in above us or below us as to whether it is 100%. But I believe it has the ability to constrict its pouch to such a degree that it keeps its babies dry whilst it's
nice.
in the water.
That's cool.
I vaguely think that's accurate. I could be wrong. And as we pointed out earlier, we like to make sure that we fact check ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really cool mammal, but it's going to have to go to the giant anteater, maybe a tamandua.
Oh, I forgot about tamanduas. That would probably be like after jaguar and Maine wolf, I reckon.
Yeah. But let us know what your favorite South American mammal is on our Facebook page or on our YouTube page, where we will read them out next week. It'd be interesting to see what people have. I'm betting jaguar will come quite high.
Yeah, I reckon
giant
so.
anteater will probably be up there as well. I'm going to say capybara or tapir is going to come.
I can't imagine anyone's favorite South American mammal being a capybara.
Oh, there are loads of people that love capybara.
Well, I vaguely remember me being like quite fond of capybaras at one stage, until I think management ruined them at a certain place that will remain nameless.
Wow, they are pretty cool, but yes, there's a lot of cooler mammals in South America than a capybara. So yeah, let us know on our Facebook page or on our YouTube in the comments section, and let us know which one you think that is. So that's one of the many ways that you can get in contact with us. you can do so on a variety of different social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and well, Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. Although we've made a bit of a decision based on the way that Twitter has gone, and how very sort of it does not meet with a lot of our sort of ethos anymore. And we will still be present there, and we'll post each new episode up. However, we're not really going to be doing as much on there. You may have noticed that we don't do as much on there as we do on our Facebook or our Instagram or YouTube or even our TikTok page. But yeah, we'll still be there. If you want to get in contact with us via Twitter, you certainly can. But it's not one that we're going to be actively going and promoting as much anymore. That's just where I feel we're at with it as an ethos. Really.
Yeah.
Not that us not being that active on there will make a huge change in the way things go. But one way that you can certainly get in contact with us is our email address, which is thenathistorykupboard@gmail.com. And I believe, Aaron, you've got us a email this week.
We do, and it's from one of our Patreon supporters, Nick to Nick. Now this one is a little bit older. But it's just because we haven't managed to get through them quite as quickly as we'd hoped. But Nick says, "Hey guys, I had a great encounter on my morning walk after watching the podcast. I seen what I thought was yet another stick trying to fool me by pretending to be a snake. However, this one was moving.
Oh,
that's no stick. It was a tiger snake with beautiful
nice
banding. I will attach a photo. As for my favorite reptile, I have no idea, because this is responding to a question we had a little while ago. There are way too many, and he is right about that. Tiger snakes definitely high on the list. I do also like lowland copperheads, although I am biased because I keep a pet one named Noodles. I'll attach a photo of Noodles as well, looking chunky after a meal. Tasmanian bias may also be clear here. I am also volunteering with some lizard research this summer. Oh, good. Whatever that species end up being, may become a favorite just by learning a lot about them. As always, keep up the great work. Kind regards, Nick. Yes, just a reminder, I do have permits and training, etc. for these snakes."
That's good.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Very, very cool. And good choice of species.
Yeah. So another one that has come in through our Facebook Messenger is from Leah Dorr, and she has sent us in a rather interesting one, actually. She said, "Forgive me if you guys have already covered something like this and I've missed it, but a little idea that I thought you might want to look into. Would love to hear your take on it. Picking an animal or your favorite animal, discussing how that animal would have looked and acted if the continents had shifted in a different way.
Ooh.
So if your animal had evolved in a different climate, for instance, part of the world, how would you imagine it would look or behave? A bit of what if in an alternate universe for you there." So Aaron, basically, I think the way to describe it is sort of regional Pokemon, if you want to do it like that, where you just sort of change the typing sort of situation.
So like if a tiger ended up in South America instead.
Yeah.
And then had evolved there.
Pick an animal, Aaron.
Tiger.
Okay. There you go. Tiger in South America then. Do you think it would drastically change or not?
No, and maybe by picking tiger, I've made it too easy on myself. So just to answer that very quickly, I think the appearance would change slightly. I think you'd still have the world's biggest cat. I just think because part of that is evolution in through genetics. I also think that you wouldn't be just. I don't think you'd just get a larger version of the jaguar. I think that you wouldn't have a spotted cat. I think that, but you still wouldn't have the striped cat either. I think you'd be looking at, if you imagine, medium-sized tiger, a little bit of a bulkier, stockier build to the front, and I also think you're looking at something with a very clouded leopard-like pattern to it, as opposed to pure stripes or pure rosettes. I think there's a lot of prey there that that animal can take, but I also don't think that there's much competition there for a tiger. So I still think it keeps that very much apex
Predator.
thing. Whereas jaguar and cougar, I can see, even though jaguar is more powerful for sure, I can see there being a little bit of competition relevant there.
Yeah.
Between the two species. But I think if you move the tiger in to that area and you say that either of the cats in that appear in South America, either of the larger cats from South America are suddenly dispersed by that, so maybe tiger's gone there and jaguar has ended up in Asia, I think that you don't get as much competition at that point, and I think that may actually impact the evolution of the cougar, creating a slightly smaller cat.
You're just shuffling all the cats around.
yeah. No, I think you end up with a bulkier tiger with a clouded leopard-esque pattern.
Yeah.
And I think you end up with a smaller cougar in South
Fair
America,
enough.
at least.
Well, I'm going to go with one that sort of changes an environment slightly.
Okay.
So imagine for the very longest time, there was thought to be an inland sea in the center of Australia. Turns out, they've only missed it by a couple of million years. But I'm going to posit the theory that this inland sea still exists, is connected either at the north or the south of Australia to the point where there is an inland sea there, and you could traverse it. I would like to posit the thought that at some point a marsupial, going along the same lines as the yapot, has become aquatic.
Oh, that's cool.
And become almost fully aquatic, either like a seal, and hauling itself out for periods of time to basically, nurse its young, or something like a monotremes, like a platypus, becoming larger and more almost whale-like,
like a croco whale.
Yeah, something along those lines. I mean, this is very much going into the terms of like what's called speculative evolution and stuff like that. And if you have a look at speculative evolution stuff online, there are tons of what are called speculative evolution like projects where people come up with entire changing like one or two bits. So that the main one is usually the dinosaurs don't go extinct. I mean, dinosaurs didn't go extinct in the traditional
non-avian dinosaurs.
Non-avians not going extinct, and you end up with speculating what animals would be populating what continent millions of years into the future and how they differ and all these sort of things. And one of the most famous and most amazing series of books is by someone called Dougal Dixon, who did the Life After Dinosaurs, Life After Man, and Man After Man books, which are they're basically the main version of like speculative evolution. And then you've got All Tomorrows and All Yesterdays as well, which is speculative evolution that go to the next step, and just stunning artwork in all of them. So have a good look around on the internet, I'd suggest, on those. But yeah, really good question then, Leah. That's
I think
that's really sends you down the what if scenario universe quite a bit.
If we got more questions that kind of needed a little bit of prep time, questions like that, maybe we can bring that question up in like a bonus episode.
I think we could certainly do it,
where we've given a little bit more thought, and maybe we can take animals out of time and space.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something we should look at in the future and very much go down that route. So yeah, fantastic question there. And you can get in contact with us in a variety of different ways, like those two wonderful people have. Another way that you can do it, which Aaron is going to tell us about now, is by becoming a Patreon. So what are we looking at, Aaron?
Yeah, so every week we like to shout out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. Now, these are cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick Tinick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard. And like I say, we're grateful, like beyond words. There's not really enough ways to thank you. Now we do obviously appreciate everything that all of our cupboard dwellers do for us, whether that's just watching and listening, or whether it's sharing, subscribing, liking, reviewing, or even just commenting on posts. You comment on any and all posts, and we will do our best to comment back, and it all helps with the algorithm. So yeah, thank you. But if you are thinking of joining our Patreon, you can do so at 2 different tiers, and that is the Nature Nerds and the Animal Ambassadors. And there's more details of that on the website, or on the Patreon page, I should say. But yeah, with that said, probably for the 4th time, because it never quite seems enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so like Aaron said, a massive thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, and a massive thank you to you at home for, well, basically joining in on whichever social media platform we are on, where we're ever doing things, and doing all of that as well. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode, Aaron.
It does.
So a big thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for bringing us information on the Thylacosmilus, or should I say the Thylacosmilus? I can't even work out how that AI said it.
Thylacosmilus.
Thylacosmilus.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, no, it's been more robotic, I suppose, doesn't it?
Thylacosmilus. It ended up sounding like a bit like a weird Terminator. That did.
Yeah, a little bit. And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we will see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
We'll be back.
One does not simply generate an image of an animal using AI and get it even remotely correct.
No.